Hi, I'm Russell Sturgis. I'm the founder and principal of EAP Mentor. Welcome to part 2 in a 5-part blog series that I'm doing on the principles of EAP Mentor. These are 5 foundational principles that sit behind our Enhances Awareness program and the other programs that we run here at EAP Mentor. This second principle states that you can't change what you can't see. In other words, you can't change what you are unaware of. And EAP literally stands for Enhances Awareness Program. And the reason that it was called that is that the primary function of the work that we do is to help people become more aware. And the reason for that is what this second principle is all about. And that is that if you're unaware, then nothing changes. And so what we do is help people to establish a greater awareness of how they turn up in the world physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And through that enhanced awareness, they have options in terms of being mindful of, instead of living life habitually, being able to live life more mindfully, where they have a recollection of what would be more serving alternatives because of this enhanced knowledge or awareness that they've been able to gain. I just want to talk about the first part of this, and this is about this whole notion of developing an awareness of our current reality. How we do that at EAP is we have people go through and identify how they relate in their life experience to 60 statements. And so what we have is 15 statements that define how people turn up physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So there's 15 physical, 15 mental, 15 emotional, and 15 spiritual. And when they look at these statements, it's an opportunity for them to self-assess whether this is something that really relates to them. In other words, they're highly aware of it, or something that has no relationship to them whatsoever, which means there's no awareness of the element, or it's in between, it's a but. So in other words, they sort of sit somewhere between being aware of it, but which is occasionally, and probably more than not, they're not aware of it. So we give people this sliding scale between yes, a no, and a but in terms of how this turns up in their lives. And what's really interesting is when people have completed this self-assessment of their current state of awareness, and they're looking at their scoring, and of course our basic fundamental belief is that the more unaware you are, the more you suffer, and potentially the more awareness that you develop, the less you have, the less suffering you experience. So what happens is when people identify their current state of awareness, one of the things that we commonly hear when we work with people is that they say, I had no idea how unaware I was. In other words, another way of saying it, and they often say this, I had no idea of how habitually I lived my life, where I just did everything on autopilot. And that's basically saying the same thing. So what I thought I'd do is give you an opportunity to have a look at just 3 from each of the 4 areas of consciousness, and get you to take a moment to self-assess where you sit in terms of, is this something that really you are aware of and is intrinsic to your life experience? Or at the other end of it, it's something that you don't relate to at all and you don't give any credence to, or you sit somewhere in between. So let's have a look at the mental ones, and I've just picked 3 out of the 15. The first one says, I maintain a mental attitude that supports my well-being. So in other words, this is the fact that you choose the attitude of the mind that you have that supports your well-being. So this will be, we used to talk about positive mental attitude. So this would be maintaining a positive mental attitude, or a peaceful attitude, or a more loving attitude, one that's serving. And so I'll just give you a moment to think about that in terms of whether, yep, You're really conscious of being mindful about that. And in other words, you do maintain a positive mental attitude, or no, or sometimes. The next one is, I mostly choose the thoughts I dwell on. Now, I like to have people distinguish between the fact that many times the thoughts that we dwell on choose us. We actually don't choose them. So a thought pops into our mind and then we start playing with it. And it's not even a choice. We actually just habitually play with it. Worry is a perfect example. This is proposing the idea that we can actually choose a thought and then entertain our thinking around a thought that we've chosen. Once again, is this something that you do, you don't? Sometimes. I choose to be peaceful in stressful situations. So once again, this is this whole idea that I can be presented with a situation that can be stressful, but I actually make a choice to have peace be my priority in terms of how I relate to stressful situations. Now, it doesn't mean to say that you get it right every time, but that you have the intention, that you make the effort to have peace be your priority. So here's 3 statements around your state of how you use the mind as a state of consciousness, and that you are aware of and therefore are conscious of making choices around how you turn up mentally. Let's have a look at 3 as they relate to who you are physically. I exercise in a way that supports my well-being. Here's one that's a little bit edgy. My sexual needs are met in a way that supports my well-being. Here's another one. I am often the recipient of nurturing touch. Of course, nurturing touch could be holding hands, it could be cuddling up to someone, a grandchild or your sweetheart. It could be having a massage. Once again, the physical one incorporates things like finances and quality of sleep and the substances you take into your body. But these are the 3 that I've just chosen today. Let's have a look at the emotional ones. I'm usually aware of what I am feeling. So in other words, it's like, not your thoughts, and people often get these mixed up. This isn't about what I'm thinking, but usually aware of what it is that I'm feeling. I can freely express my feelings when conversing with others. So once again, this is distinguishing between your thoughts versus being able to express how it is that you feel. And of course, this requires a certain amount of transparency and vulnerability. And so oftentimes people will not do this because it's too exposing. This is one that's a common no. I'm often aware of feeling good about myself. So where you have this sense that you feel good about who you are in terms of your experience in your life, the quality of your relationships, how you contribute and make a difference in the world, etc., etc. And then finally, spiritual. In the context of EAP, spiritual isn't religious. Spiritual is about what motivates you. It's about what drives you. It's what gives life and momentum to your experience as a human being. So the very first one is, I'm clear about the things I value most. People have stated values, but most people aren't clear of what they value most. And here's a really simple exercise. Take a moment to consider how you spend your time and your money and why you spend it the way that you do. Think about those things, and then you'll have an idea of what it is that you value. So the question then is, are you clear about those things? It's surprising how many people aren't. This is probably our biggest no in all of the elements, and that is, it's easy for me to be self-forgiving. It's amazing how many people this is a total no for them. The capacity to be self-forgiving is elusive. And then the third one that I chose is that my career, work or service is a significant, source of fulfillment. And of course, for many people, and for some of you listening today, your career, your work or your service is bound by duty. It's about how you pay the bills. It's what you've been programmed to do. It's not about fulfillment. It's not about being meaningful. How'd you go with those? How many of those are you aware of or not aware of when it comes to your own personal experience? Our lack of awareness around these things and the other statements that we have in our exercise where people get to assess where they are physically, mentally, emotionally and spiritually. The context of this is that the degree to which we're aware of it means that we have the capacity to create change and to be able to turn up as it relates to these things in a much more loving and nurturing way. Whereas the more unaware we are of it, the tendency is to be habitual, which means we'll do it how we've always done it. And generally how we do it is based on the programming of somebody else. And invariably it's our parents or the people who had the biggest impact on our formative years. And so the second fundamental principle, which is key to the work that we do in our program, is this whole idea that you can't change what you can't see. And so this principle says that in order for change to happen, you have to be able to see, you have to be able to recognize. And so this ability for, and once again, once upon a time they used to use the word confession, and of course confession became steeped in guilt and shame. And of course none of this is about guilt and shame. This is about the whole idea that it was more or less serving. And so confession is what was more or less serving as opposed to what was right or wrong. Anyway, so our second principle is that you need to be able to clearly see what's going on in order for it to change. And so if you want to find out more about this and the principles that we have that underpin the Enhances Awareness program and the work at EAP Mentor, please go to our website, eapmentor.com. And if you'd like to find out about ways of engaging mindfulness and awareness as a daily practice, go onto our Facebook page, which is at Enhances Awareness Program, and we have regular stuff being put up on there which will be really helpful around what it is that you can do to maintain awareness and therefore mindfulness to enrich the quality of your experience. Thanks for joining me today, and our next blog will cover the third principle, which is healing is listening. Speak to you then. Bye.